Happy New Year! In sales, when the new year starts, we all start back to zero. Now, for owners of MSPs, the beauty of our business is you have a bulk of reoccurring revenue that, boy, starts your year off right. But when it comes to finding new business, we all start at zero. Everything resets. Last year is a memory, and it's the start of a new year. Time to give ourselves a raise if you're a salesperson. That's right, salespeople get raises by selling more. So, what resolutions do we need to set? That is the topic for today's podcast. We will help sales hunters to set sales resolution goals that are clear and attainable to stay focused and motivated. This podcast will also help the MSP owner set sales resolutions to focus on growing their business in the new year. So I'd like to welcome Jake Gipson to the podcast. Jake, Happy New Year and welcome to the Results Selling Framework podcast.
Thank you for having me, Keith, and Happy New Year to you as well. It's kind of the best of times, the worst of times from A Tale of Two Cities, depending on if you have a plan or not. But my name is Jake Gipson, and I am the Manager of Enablement Programs here at Pax8. I've been involved in the IT and the channel industry for several years, primarily helping MSPs grow their businesses and improve their sales strategies. So I've also worked as a channel account manager here at Pax8. That's actually how I got my start. And I was guiding partners through everything from product selection to building a strong sales process that could drive that consistent revenue growth.
Fantastic. Glad to have you here and have you share your wealth of knowledge to the masses, if you will.
Absolutely. And oh, by the way, in Pax8 style, we have to do a fun or interesting fact. So I'm a big tinkerer. I love to build stuff. This Majora's Mask behind me, 3D printed and painted that up. And then, of course, also my arcade machine back here that I've been building this year. It's almost there, but as any person who is a maker knows, it's never quite done. So we'll see how it goes.
That's amazing. That's awesome, Jake. So what's on your arcade? What do you have? What games do you have on there?
So I only have legal backups of arcade games on my machine. Definitely not any sort of ROMs or emulators that are not officially sanctioned. Street Fighter, for example. That kind of thing. All of them, basically. Every single one.
So I like what you said in your intro, best of times, worst of times. I always kind of said, like, look, if you struggled last year, here's your chance to reset. And if you were successful last year, boy, build upon that momentum. Nothing is better for a salesperson than getting some wins to finish up the year and really have that confidence rolling into the new one. What are your thoughts around that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, a lot of times we think that it was external factors that kind of put a hitch in our plans the previous years. And if we do the same thing this year, it's definitely going to work. Well, that's kind of the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So one of my favorite things about failing, and I do fail, and I fail fast, at least I try to, is that it shows you the different roadblocks that you might run into the new year. So making sure that you're not only, setting up goals for 2025, but also considering the actions that you took in 2024, that is really what's going to help you get over that possible fear of making some sort of a change.
I want to set this program up with a tip right out of the gate for everybody listening. I always talk about the rule of 30. Rule of 30 was something I used in my MSP in my days of selling. It meant whatever I did over the next 30 days of prospecting, the results would be reflected 60 to 120 days out from now. So if we come out of the gate swinging, March through May should look pretty solid. We should have, our pipeline should actually be realistic and full. The converse is true as well, as if you kind of stumble or you don't make prospecting relentless or consistent, you're not going to have the results you want. So for the MSP owners that are out there that are responsible for the sales, I want you to kind of put the word consistent in mind. That means doing something every day, at least doing something sales driven, business growth driven for new clients every day, every week. For salespeople, you got to be relentless. It's your job, it's your career. Go get it. Be relentless with it. So that's my public service announcement, Jake. I want to make sure everybody gets that and makes that a goal, if you will, or a lifestyle, if you will, for this year.
I couldn't agree more. And it sounds a bit defeatist, but I always say abandon all hope. Basically, whatever you have in your pipeline, whatever you 100% know is going to close, because it always closes, right? There's never anything that ever happens that, stands in the way. Once you have that pipeline, abandon all that hope and build out another one, right? That 2x, 3x pipeline, that is the only way that we as sellers can get away from that feeling of living and dying every month, every quarter, every year. Take what you have and then go get more.
That's a great tip. So let me ask you real quick, what got you started in sales? What made you passionate about being in the sales profession?
You know what? I think, like a lot of salespeople, I just kind of fell into it. I moved out when I was 18, moved to Columbia, Missouri, where I met my fiance, and I was working in retail sales. And let me tell you, I never want to have to go back to that. For all of you who are sitting in front of a computer wondering if you need to pick up the phone and dial, just do it. It is so much better than people knocking on the door at 7:30 a.m., especially on iPhone launch day. So from there, I've had a couple of different sales jobs in different industries, but it all came back to consultation. I'm not the kind of person who wants to just convince you to buy something and sign on the dotted line. I like having actual partnerships, seeing the output of the kind of conversations that I have. Might be because I grew up in my family's small business, I'm not sure. But PAX 8 has really allowed me to build that kind of a partnership with the folks that we work with, and that's the key to it all. Like we always say, the sale is the result, not the goal. Excuse me. So when you think about the sale being the result instead of the goal, you're able to actually build that plan, work that plan, and have the sales come to fruition on their own. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, it's good stuff. It's a great segue into kind of what I wanted to talk about. So last month we had Jeremy Nelson on the program, and we focused on preparing and planning for growth in the new year. And this month I want to help MSP owners and salespeople set and kind of stay focused, kind of like you said, put the pipeline together, get rid of the hope line. Stay focused on their goals and KPIs. That's something that you have the background to help us with?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Keith. I'm a big believer in the power of well-defined, measurable goals. And I want to say that again, well-defined, measurable goals. So whether it's revenue targets, it's client acquisition benchmarks, or even pipeline activity metrics, having the right goals in place can really mean the difference between drifting through the year, like a lot of us probably have in the past, and then driving that intentional growth instead. So I'd be more than happy to share some of my experiences, these insights that I've heard from MSPs and their sales teams, because a lot of folks that I've spoken to are close to going out of business, and they were close to going out of business 6 months ago. They just don't realize it yet. So having these goals can help get you on track.
Yeah, it's so well said. You look at, it's a new year, so what's the number one New Year's resolution is, hey, I need to lose weight. Everybody, the majority of people in the world go with that resolution, and by the second week in January, it's gone. it's a dream. It's in the past, but it's that consistency that helps you lose weight, keep it off, right? It's if you're gonna do it, it's great to say it, but hey, do you have a plan in place to make it happen, right? Because if you have a vision like, hey, I'm going to sell 3 new managed service agreements in January, that might not be realistic. It might be too far of a stretch, especially if you haven't done anything up to this point. Same thing. It's like, hey, I want to drop 10 pounds in the month of January. Whoo, you better get cracking if you want to do that. I like what you said. Set realistic, but a little bit of a stretch goal. Nothing that's going to be so out of touch that it defeats you, in the first 30 days, the first quarter, right?
Oh yeah. And that's the thing. When we talk about sales goals, a lot of times we're thinking about, the high level, I want to do this as a company or as an MSP. And in reality, setting sales goals is the foundation of any successful sales strategy, and it's more than just the people at the top. So when you think about your salespeople, if they're going into this without sales goals, it's going to be easy for them to lose focus and get pulled in multiple directions. So if you ask me, clear goals bring three things, and that is clarity, focus, and accountability. For clarity, when your team knows exactly what they're aiming for, be it a certain monthly revenue goal, new client, bringing on a new client, it's going to be easier to prioritize these day-to-day activities. When it comes to focus, the goals help salespeople avoid distractions because there's always another vendor, another product, or another conversation to have, right? But having these quantifiable targets ensures that you're staying zeroed in on what moves the needle. And then lastly, the accountability piece. And this is the biggest one in my opinion. With defined objectives, everyone is going to be able to see if they're on track or if you need to adjust. And this is going to create that culture of ownership and continuous improvement, not just reporting up. And ultimately, goals serve as those roadmaps. They tell you where you're going and help you to measure whether or not you're getting there efficiently. And the measurement is huge.
I love those. Boy, most people say, hey, I need to set some sort of goal so I have a target to achieve. Absolutely. There's an accountability focus, but clarity and focus, like you mentioned, wow, that's it goes back to what I just said. Like, people, want to lose weight, but after a couple weeks, they lose that clarity and focus, and salespeople can do the same, right? We get derailed, off track, something happens, maybe we lose an opportunity we didn't think we were going to lose, right? That's the key. So when you were a channel account manager here at PAX 8, kind of, how did you kind of keep yourself clear and focused on the end game and on your goals?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it goes back to, again, not to sound defeatist, but abandon all hope. When it comes to your pipeline, I think we all have had those big deals that we're waiting for that signature or that order to be placed at the end of the month, and you're sitting around the computer till about 9 p.m. when you realize, wow, that's not going to happen. So you do a little bit of retrospect on your previous month and you realize that you've really been counting on that big deal the whole time. So abandon all hope. It gets you motivated. It'll get you to pick up the phone and dial because, just sitting there waiting for it to happen isn't enough. And luckily, when it comes to the partners that we work with, when I was a CAM, I worked with a lot of folks who had a little bit of structure, but were still kind of winging it. They really needed that extra hand on the back just for motivation, if not anything else. When you break it down, it really turns into kind of a thought experiment or a math problem. That's what the results selling framework in Command of the Message is all about. So when you're able to look at things from that higher level view, take all the emotion out of it, and put some numbers together that are not going to have that kind of reaction, you're going to find that the goals aren't that hard to build. They're just a little bit more difficult to drive if you don't have that consistency. So getting people on board, showing them that there is a way out of whatever kind of pain or current nightmare they're dealing with, that's the best piece that I ever worked with as a CAM.
Love it. I like what you said. Like, there's so many MSPs out there. They want new sales. They wish for new sales in their business to grow. But really, it's those few that really make it happen that see the consistent growth, right? The others, you'll have this roller coaster ride. And that's the same thing for salespeople. The average salesperson, where you have the roller coaster ride, it's, you don't have that clarity and that focus and that passion all year long, through good and bad, right?
Oh yeah, and people like to throw out, the big hairy audacious goals, and that's scary for a lot of people. Like maybe for a CEO, that's something that makes sense. But when it comes down to the salespeople, the individual contributors, they need motivation. And motivation often is going to come from breaking those larger annual goals down into the smaller achievable milestones. So for example, if you had a revenue goal for a year, consider what that means on a quarterly basis, maybe a monthly basis, and then celebrate each incremental win. It's going to help the team feel like they're making steady progress rather than just staring up a mountain and hoping it falls down around them. So, as for adjusting goals, I do think that's important as well. It's essential to remain flexible. So, market conditions, client needs, product offerings, those things always shift, right? It's not a can, it's a win. So, set aside those regular intervals as well for your quarterly or yearly revisits of your goals. Make sure, are we still aiming at the right targets? If the landscape changes, there's no shame in recalibrating. That's just part of our industry, well, for good, better or worse. So the key is to make sure that you're always moving forward with intention and not just holding on to a goal that really no longer makes sense. That is something that kills motivation very quickly.
Man, spot on. Like, I'm gonna put this back again. We're talking about, new year, new resolutions. Going back to the weight loss journey. If you want, that big, hairy, audacious goal is like, hey, I want to lose 50 pounds. Like, that is a big goal. However, if you break it down of like, hey, I want to lose 1 pound per week. And by doing that, I'm going to get there, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to exercise regularly, kind of like you said, breaking it down to the small attainable one. Next thing you know is that 50, you might, it might take you to the end of the year to reach it, to lose 50 pounds. You might get surprised. You may lose that by the end of summer or the fall. Like, but consistency and clarity and focus, going back to where you started, that's the key. I love this, Jake. Great advice. When it comes to from a standpoint of MSPs, right? They all have sales goals. Again, whether it's owner or salesperson. Owner increasing overall revenue. Salesperson, new client acquisition. Owners may have retention. What are some tips that you might have for them around, just like you said, consistency, small bites throughout the year? What would kind of be your guiding path for them?
Yeah, I mean, personally, it depends on exactly who you're talking to, right? Who is your audience? Because personally, I like to use both SMART goals and OKRs. And SMART goals are basically specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, not The Revenant, starring Leo DiCaprio, and time bound. So these things are a tried and true method because they force you to be crystal clear about what you're trying to accomplish. So, for instance, don't just say, oh, I want to increase my revenue this year. You can say, increase monthly recurring revenue by 15% by Q2. That level of detail gives your team an actual target to hit that's not just aspirational, but also actionable. And then when it comes to the OKRs, this is something that I would recommend from the top down, right? They work similarly, but they're often going to provide a more broad strategic umbrella. And the objective being, and then that is supported by a quantifiable key result. So, for example, an objective might be expand our footprint in the healthcare vertical, and a key result might be close 3 new healthcare clients by the end of Q1. So these OKRs, align efforts across your organization, again, making sure that everyone's tasks ladder up to the bigger picture goal. If you have your chickens running around with their head cut off, it's no wonder that they can't find their way back to the coop. So make sure that everyone is included in these things. Break it down into actionable things, not just those big, hairy, audacious goals.
Yeah, I like that. And I like what you said earlier that ties into this. I'm glad you brought, SMART goals and OKRs into this. And what you said earlier around the flexibility. Like SMART goals are typically pretty rigid and specific set of criteria, where OKRs are more flexible and adaptable, kind of allowing for that progress or adjustments along the way. Now, when you're training the sales team here at PAX 8, you know, what are some of your methodologies around this flexibility and also helping each individual contributor kind of reach whatever goals or OKRs they've been given?
Absolutely. So the wonderful thing about Pax8 is that we do use command of the message as our methodology. And again, this is very straightforward, right? It is what is your current state and the negative consequences of that state? What are your desired future scenarios and the positive business outcomes that you're going to see as a result of that? And the delta, the difference between those two, is the value that you're looking to get for the year. So when you talk about it like this, and when you have these honest conversations about goals and how to achieve them, it allows you the headspace to be able to admit that something maybe didn't go quite as planned, go back into that framework and find out what we can do to address those required capabilities. So a lot of people, again, they get bummed out when they don't hit a goal or an OKR. They lie to themselves and say, hey, no, it's not going as bad as we think it is. But as long as you're taking those, failures, if you will, failing fast and then learning from them, that's going to allow you to kind of kill your ego and reassess these things as they happen instead of waiting for it to blow up once a quarter, once a year, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And for the audience out there, result selling framework is taught internally. You heard Jake say command of the message. It's the same methodology. It's around, kind of from a standpoint, we're going to talk the same language. Your channel account manager is talking the same language to you as you should be talking to your clients, right? So when I coach partners around this, like around setting goals, like focus. I always talk to them about focus on planning with existing clients. Like sales also comes from the existing clients as well as new base, right? How can you help your clients and prospects grow their business, gain efficiencies, minimize risk while increasing, you'll help your MSP increase your project and professional services revenue or managed services revenue, right? Another goal I typically give my partners is like, if you haven't increased rates in a while, increase your rates if you haven't done that recently. That's going to drive, again, revenue. And most of your clients are expecting some increase, especially if you haven't done it over the last 12 to 36 months. And then lastly, I guide my partners to measure profitability of their service agreements. Are you getting the right profit agreement? Best in class is somewhere between 50 to 65% gross margin in your managed services, because we're taking on the risk, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of our partners still see themselves as just a external vendor. If I'm being honest, they sell services. They don't really provide that strategic advisory that a lot of these folks are really looking for. So when you don't have those conversations, if you just come to them and say, hey, we're raising prices, well, yeah, you might get them scoffing at it. But if you have a plan, if you outline exactly how you are addressing your clients' needs and show them that value, then the price increase isn't even a part of the conversation. Or let's be honest, it's a smaller piece of the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point on the value prop, right? You have to be sharing how you're going to provide some value. And again, if you haven't raised rates in years, you can kind of resort back to, cost of everything going up. That's one thing, but yeah, you have to have some sort of value. Hey, by increasing rates, we can provide this to you now. Right?
Exactly. Don't leave it up to their imagination, because their imagination will always go to bad places. Not good.
Yeah, that's right. So, we talked a little bit about results selling framework. We kind of went around, setting some goals. So, what are, some realistic goals? This is for the MSPs out there. What are some realistic goals that you would give them for, for this year, for 2025? Some of the, going back to some of those small steps for them to start the year right.
Yeah, and it's really going to depend on, the persona, the size of your business, the verticals that you work with. But across all my different partners, I would really advise to start by focusing on those small incremental changes and use those to build momentum. So, for example, set a monthly outbound prospecting target. So you could maybe commit to making 20 contacts or prospect calls each week, depending on how big your MSP or our partner is. And then over this time, that adds to that healthier pipeline. Also, start to upsell existing segment of clients. Identify 5 to 10 current customers who could benefit from a new security offering, a cloud service. There's a ton of crazy stuff going on with Dynamics right now. And then proactively pitch them in Q1. I would also recommend that, and this is a tough one. People who run the business don't like to hear this, but review and refine your internal processes. Commit to auditing at least one internal process per month. So, like proposal creation, follow-up cadence, making at least one improvement on internal processes per month is going to do wonders for not only your bottom line, but also your employees' happiness, right? When they come in, they see that you're trying to make their life easier, they want to do the same.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and you kind of mentioned a couple other things, like when you look at, some of the, going back to the adjustments conversation we had, and also, like you said, taking these small steps. Um, Remember, and I love the fact of being a thought leader. I try to teach my partners that, and you were saying something very similar. Like, have a webinar, and don't talk about your products and solutions. Right? We're going back to result selling framework here. What problems do your products and solutions solve? Make a webinar about around that, or create some sort of thought leadership article around that you can send out to, looping back to what you said earlier, target industries that you go after, right? It all kind of circles around, but you do want to have a marketing and prospecting plan for Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, and start lining them up now. Start planning for the whole entire year now if you haven't already done so back at the end of last year.
Oh yeah, and I would add to that, a lot of folks, they try to plan for their competition and they don't realize that their biggest competitor is the choice for their customers to do nothing, to stay with how they are. And that continues to be a drain on your resources, on your employees, and you might just end up getting yourself a new customer that ends up taking you out. So keep that kind of thing in mind. It is huge. It's not just what the other MSPs on the block might be able to do to take away that value from them. It's apathy that could be your biggest competitor.
Oh, that and the fear of change, right? That
Hmm.
they stay with their current provider or whatever. Boy, you really hit the nail on the head there, because that's the really biggest struggle, is that uh, they're saying to themselves, "Hey, is it really worth going through the hassle of changing providers?" And you've got an uphill battle. Have a plan to fight that fear of change. I love that. Excellent. So I typically leave with this, and I kind of give you your kind of last talking point. Any tips, like from being in sales and training sales people? Any tips for the sales folks out there on you know any last minute thoughts, I guess, of words of advice, words of wisdom, whatever you want to kind of shed on them before we say goodbye here.
Yeah, I would say take control. Instead of waiting for things to come down from the top telling you what your targets are, bring some things to your manager, to your leadership. Show them what you're planning on doing so that that can help inform theirs. Because if you fail to do that, you're going to get something passed down to you that you may not have that relation to. It may not be achievable in your eyes. So make yourself a part of the plan. Always take that next step, because if you don't, you're just going to stagnate. And that's why it's so dangerous. Put yourself out there, make the plan, work the plan, and don't be afraid to tweak it if you need to. If this were predictable, we'd all be in President's Club, right? Luckily, all of you just hit it sometimes, not always. It keeps the allure of it up.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and also like what you said there, I always coach my sales team is like, hey, I'm giving you this sales target because this is matching and mirroring what the company wants to do, what we want to do as far as growth. If you have a higher goal around your desired income, make a plan around that and then bring that to your sales manager, your sales leader to kind of review that. Say, hey, I appreciate the target that you gave me. I'd like to see if I can stretch that and achieve these goals. What do you think around that and the ability to attain it and making sure that, like you said, you can reach it, be flexible, all the great things that you said here today, Jake?
Oh yeah, people only operate with the information that they have, and if you fail to give them information you have, you can't be upset when it's not considered. So get involved, make yourself a part of the conversation, and turn it into a community instead of just a job.
Excellent. Well, Jake, lots of great advice. I'm hoping the partners that are watching kind of take your advice to salt of the earth and really follow it because it's something that can help them be successful this year and beyond. So thanks again for being here. I really appreciate your time and your energy and obviously your expertise.
Of course, and thank you, Keith. I love all of our partners. I grew up in a small business, a family-owned business myself, so I definitely get it, and I love getting to work with you all every day. So thank you again, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks again. See you later, Jake. Wow, Jake gave us a lot of good information really to start the year off right. And please remember, it's consistency here. It's like whether you're trying to lose weight or trying to gain sales, one day at a time, one step at a time, one tactic at a time to get to that end goal. Stay focused on who you're trying to approach and go after and make it happen, right? That's the key. You got to make it happen. Can't take a day off. So, setting sales goals is a critical aspect of any successful sales strategy. It provides direction and focus. It enables measurement and accountability, and it drives improvement. For an IT service provider, setting specific goals can help business growth and ensure that the team is aligned with the company's strategic objectives. Here are some relevant sales goals to consider. 1, implement targeted marketing campaigns. Participate in industry events, industries that you're going after, and leverage referrals. 2, optimize the sales process. You heard Jake say that throughout the year, optimize your sales process, one little thing at a time. That can improve lead qualification methods and refine sales pitches to actual deliverable of our value. 3, provide access to relevant training programs, workshops, and industry certifications. Get your salespeople trained on how to be better at selling. That's the key. 4, streamline the sales process. Eliminate bottlenecks and leverage sales automation tools. What's working? Let's do more of that. What's not working? Let's do less of that. Join us in February as I have Chris McDonald, president of McDonald Consulting Group. He's going to be here to discuss sharpening your sales skills. We're going to focus on those sales soft skills that are vital for success. So until next month, thanks for joining us here at Results Selling Framework Podcast. Take care and Happy New Year.
Good.
I'm wondering if you're picking up my Alexa. I'm gonna hit a pause real quick. I forgot to unpause.
Oh, okay.
I'm like,
I
holy
didn't hear
smokes, motion's detected at my garage. I'm like, nobody needs to hear that. I'm like, what's going on here?